Yeah, I want to thank everybody for being here. I'm Dan Christensen, the House Republican leader, and it's been a busy week last week. We've got a busy week this week as well. A lot of public hearings before we actually start going into executive session. I think we're going to see some of that going on here, though, in the next few days. We've been dealing with things, for example, just a smattering of bills: teacher shortages, state patrol recruitment and retention, marijuana, aerospace, basic education, workers' compensation, firearms, vaping, public safety, mental health, bathrooms. I mean, there's been all kinds of stuff that's been on the menu. If you've taken a look at the slate of bills that we're going to be looking at, not only this last week, but here in the coming days, this is the time when we all get educated on the issues that we're going to be facing over the course of the next several weeks. And so I look forward to your questions there. And with that, Senator Schussler.
Well, thank you. Brought with me Senator O'Ban and our caucus chair, Senator Parlett, this week. A lot of our action has been around charter schools moving out of the Education Committee. We had a very interesting hearing from the parents, teachers, and students of charter schools yesterday in Ways and Means. I think we'll be execing that this afternoon. I think we had a very good work session on mental health at Western State Hospital. We had really good probing questions from both sides of the aisle about what's happened there and what hasn't happened that should have there. We've had our budget work sessions, and we're moving along in a whole host of things that I won't go into any more details at this time.
And I've got with me Representative Wilcox and Representative Manueller as well. And I know this might be a little bit off key, but I think one of you, Melissa, is having a birthday today. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, see, we did some track reporting out there of our own. So happy birthday, Melissa. Any questions from you all?
Senator.
Actually, you know, I'm going to stop. Melissa, would you like to have the first question? How's that for your birthday?
I'm running Rachel's story on things, so.
Okay, I had to try.
Senator O'Ban, having moved the resolution on the subpoena resolution out of your committee this afternoon or this morning, and the rules is expected to take it up tonight, I wanted to talk with you about how quickly you think the Law and Justice Committee can get your own investigation done. I know there were concerns expressed that the governor's investigation might extend beyond the end of the legislative session. How confident are you, looking at the same amount of material, that you guys will be able to do it faster?
Well, I think the answer really lies with the governor, because our first step is to collect the relevant documents that are outlined in that resolution, and as soon as the governor can timely provide those documents and we have then an opportunity to review them, then we'll have a better idea of the scope of the investigation and how long it may take.
Follow up on that, sort of the kitchen sink on the whole Department of Corrections thing. Are you planning on future hearings on this issue? And what's your end plan? Essentially, is it going to be a report? Are you going to take it to a full Senate vote? Is it just going to be a report? Is it just going to be, yep, we heard things and that's it? Essentially, what are you ultimately going to produce?
Sure. So we start with the documents. Like, I think any good investigation begins by that review. From that, we'll have a better idea of who the key players are, who the individuals are that we should bring before our committee, so that we can hear public testimony from them. That's one of the differences between the investigation that we're able to do and the investigation that's being done behind closed doors by the governor. Is we'll have a chance to actually hear those witnesses, presumably. They'll come voluntarily. We won't have to do any more subpoenas, and we'll have a chance to take that information, make findings, and the ultimate objective here is good policy. We clearly have a cultural problem at the Department of Corrections. There is a climate that's been created there where whoever was involved in this decision making to delay a crucial fix for over 3 years, knowing that fix was needed, knowing that it was resulting in hundreds and ultimately over 3,000 people being released before their sentences were completed. That to me strikes at the heart of what DOC is not doing as a key component of our public safety system, that they are charged with carrying out those sentences, failed to do that. And we have to understand the culture that was created that made people think that was acceptable.
Okay.
That's our end game. What is the
another
culture?
question
What,
over here.
and what is the policy, what policies, if any, do we need to change?
Hold on,
Okay, I
right
don't
here,
think the
over
answer
here.
to the
Are
question-
there,
Hold on,
are there
John.
additional documents that you're hoping to get the subpoena that, in addition to the public records requests you got in, they're responding to?
Yeah, there's a host of, we think, probably relevant communications between the individuals involved who are charged with identifying and fixing and prioritizing these software changes. We assume there are management people that were involved in that process. And if they weren't, why weren't they? What's the protocols they have within the department for identifying the priorities and then fixing them in a timely basis? Was the governor involved? After all, the governor makes budget decisions, what he thinks are important and need to be funded. So we want to know if the governor was aware that there were these software issues and that fixes were not being made on a timely basis. So there are a number of documents that we certainly have not received that go to those issues.
Okay, but,
Jim, please, Jim, I want to hear
The
you.
governor's statement that the first he heard about it was on December 22nd.
The difficulty is, because of the way this investigation has been kind of crafted behind closed doors, we don't know what the governor knew and when he knew it. He may certainly have been forthright in that statement. But as an independent body, as a co-equal branch of government, we have a responsibility to the people of the state to conduct our own investigation and determine if the governor is being accurate in his statement, which I have no reason to doubt at this point that he isn't. But it's our role to be skeptical, to check those things out, to make those determinations, and ultimately will help the governor if we think he's telling an accurate statement.
okay, I want to
Jerry?
go back to my,
Jerry,
he never answered my first question.
we'll get back to you here in just a second. We'll make sure that finishes up.
Letter, are you going to really invite Nick Brown and the governor to testify, and then will you have everybody under oath, because you made a point this morning, that was a deficiency in the governor's approach, will everybody be under oath?
Ultimately, that'll be a decision of the chair who is called to testify. I haven't had a conversation with him about those individuals, so I don't know yet. And as I said, the documents will really tell us the story. Of
I would add to that, Jerry, that, the governor's told us that he plans to tell his people to fully cooperate. With full cooperation, the need to bring people in, further subpoenas, the case isn't there. But we need full cooperation, that we have transparency in what this process has brought forward.
John?
Okay, but what is your end product? It's not been addressed. Is it going to be a report? Are you going to say, hey, we have some hearings, we're going to address it in the next session? Essentially, you've got 50 days to go. What can you reasonably produce in 50 days with the idea that if you're doing a methodical investigation in any context, those things take forever to do?
Back to my earlier statement, it really depends on the governor and how timely he provides those documents.
Okay.
As to when we can finish and whether we're going to be able to do policy in this legislative session.
But can your committee meet beyond, or do you plan for your committee to meet beyond March 10th if necessary? And do you need to be in a special, you probably don't need to be in a special session to do that, but do you anticipate continuing to meet on this matter if the legislature?
I would hope that the cooperation is there and the investigators are working very well, that there's no need. We want transparency, equality, nothing real radical there. And if we have good cooperation, I think you will know, as will the public, what happened and when and why.
Would you like to see an outside investigation in addition to what the Inslee administration is doing?
I hope that there's no need for that. I hope that everybody is forthcoming and open, that those things aren't necessary.
Do you feel like the governor acted quickly enough in this situation?
Because we don't know for sure who, former chief of staff, former secretary of corrections, when they knew, what they knew, it's really difficult to say, but we owe it to the public to find out what happened,
We
and
haven't
be
had a
objective.
discussion on
Part of
these
our job
this
as a
year.
legislature too is, remember, we're involved in the budgetary process dealing with this state agency. And part of the accountability measures that go along with that is we want to make sure we're holding our state agencies accountable as well. And so while I appreciate the efforts that the governor and his staff and the investigators are putting into this, the legislature does have, we believe, a strong message here too, a strong responsibility. And that is, are we then, in all the decisions we're making related to any state agency, have we put correct accountability measures in place? We believe that, we were sent here by the people. There's 147 legislators down here. We are that branch that's the closest to the public out there, and the public is outcrying with concerns of this. I know mine, especially since Monroe Penn is in my hometown, and I've got about 3,000 inmates there, and a population that's, like any population, is concerned that people are serving their proper time and the public is safe. The public needs to have, a shot at this as well. And we believe that this gives probably a quicker demonstration of what's really going on to the public than the private investigation that's taking place. And so I think the goal, John, as you're saying, what's the goal? The goal is to find out what the truth is. To find the truth and to get it out in a timely fashion so that then we can, hopefully by the end of this session, which you're correct, we've got 50 days to go, 51 I think, that we're able to come up with as much information as possible so that before we make any hasty decisions, budgetarily speaking or policy-wise, that we really have the facts.
Are you gonna make a budgetary or policy decision? Are you gonna send a bill, or are you just gonna say, hey, Gov, you screwed up and go, and that's it? Or are you gonna produce any actual legislation?
I would say we just work through this. I mean, this is the 9th day, and I think the senator explained what the process was, and we're just trying to be transparent, and I don't think there's anything else we can say anymore.
Yeah, if we had prejudged this and already had an intended conclusion, we could answer your question, but I don't think any of us have that. And there's a couple of other arenas that we're equally concerned about, and that's mental health, and it's also understanding what we're going to do to prevent fire catastrophes of this magnitude in the future. And you're going to see, I think, people very seriously trying to dig into those issues as well. And I can tell you that we're going to do it with the help of a lot of partners. I've had more state employees in my office, for example, this week than I ever have, because they want to have input on this as well.
Have you had any, drawn any conclusions about what's wrong with the state hospitals after having your meetings?
Well, I think Senator Hill pointed out that we haven't yet spent the money we gave them. Senator Becker pointed out we failed infection control, which is very basic health care. This is proper hand washing and gloves 101, that before we throw money at it, we want to make sure that they're at least spending the increased money we gave them and spending it well.
The increased money was for expansion. It sounds like they think for years ago, we can't even handle the people we have now, let alone spend the money.
Well, if they can't teach infection control properly, rewarding them with more FTEs probably isn't going to help either.
I think this is almost as big an issue as DOC. These are the most vulnerable people among us. And we put a lot of money in there. We funded the governor's requests and then some. And instead of getting better, I'm afraid in some cases it might have gotten worse. And so we've got a responsibility to make sure that we understand the governor's plan, and we understand that agency's ability to execute on the plan. And if you were watching Schumacher in the hearing last week, I asked him if they had a plan, and the answer essentially was, if you fund this, we're going to use the money to develop a plan. And that's troubling to me.
On marijuana in this case.
Is that
I don't know that it's there, and at this point, we're gonna have to wait to listen to the scientists and find out if, it's one thing to have it available, is it affordable? And is it something?
I don't know if that is the perfect plan, but, clearly, and one of the reasons that I and others are reaching out to state employees is we need more input than we've got right now.
Out there, my understanding is that the blood test was the most accurate, but it also.
Who's gonna come up with this, we can one already.
The other thing too is we're
Both
doing
sides,
some things as well.
both chambers, when do you hope to be able to move that bill through and get
The
to
federal
court,
government,
Senator
especially,
Yesler?
Department of Defense, we've got one of the largest presence.
Well, I think when we have a comfort on both sides of the aisle, because I'm sure there are people on both sides of the aisle that are going to have some discomfort. So they have to work this out.
Chemical.
It's gonna go through probably
marijuana is
2
used, as I
committees,
understand, in many
and we're gonna look
states.
for another bipartisan solution,
I've also been
because
told that they
in
actually
all likelihood, this has to be bipartisan and eventually bicameral
to go through the
to get to the
treatment,
solution.
Say another bipartisan solution, and then
There's
you
like
go-
No, no, but I mean, the point
issues
is,
on that as well,
uh,
so when you get a
people
zero
like to point out we have almost
tolerance
exactly equal majorities of
doesn't make
Republicans and
sense how we're
Democrats.
doing this in the first
They
place.
both have
Again, going back
discomfort
years prior
to
what
some
we're
degree
talking
that it
now.
goes too far and not
These
far enough.
debates came up,
So it's
that's
gonna go
why
through the
it's
committee
still
process.
passed before.
It's gonna be fine-tuned, we're gonna educate members, caucus on it. It's taking its first steps on a long road this session.
Representative Sullivan said he'd like to get it off the House floor maybe third week, which will be next week. Is that something you'd be willing to take at that point and move along a similar timeframe?
I think when we have both caucuses comfortable is the time. This isn't about how fast, this is about getting it right. And getting it right is going to require a buy-in from both caucuses and both chambers.
Well, and as an example, Melissa, some of the concerns that have been expressed out there are late in the game, right before the bill was dropped. They added things like capital budget in there. Those were things that were not part of the original McCleary decision. As we all know, all of the subsequent decisions, they kind of moved the goalposts a little bit. There were things that were added along the way. And so a lot of the differences of opinion we have, amongst not just our own caucus, but amongst the legislators in general down here is, how many times do we move the goalpost? What are we really trying to solve here? When you start adding things like capital budget, teacher shortage, and then you've got the date certainty in there as far as the 2017 cycle and how the wording works in there. There are some things that I think that there's some refinements in the print, in the bill itself, that need to take place. That's what the amendatory process is about, and I'm sure there'll be some negotiating that takes place on the House side before it actually goes out of the House. But then the question will be between the two majorities in the Senate and the House, how do we finally come up with the language that's going to work for both sides?
What are your thoughts on Senate Democrats' plan for free tuition for community colleges? They announced that today.
How are they going to pay for it? I mean, really? We are the only caucus, the only party that has ever cut tuition in this state. And we did it without new taxes. Show me how they're going to pay for it. And pay for McCleary, and pay for mental health. Show me, because we're the only ones that have ever done it.
And I find it interesting, I find it interesting too, that last year it was tough to get them to lower tuition. that was the big debate, was lowering tuition last year, over the how you're going to pay for it. So I too would second that as to where are you gonna come up with the money to pay for
Aren't
it.
you reversing the whole thing from last year, where your side wanted to cut tuition and fees, say, well, where's the money? Now they want to cut tuition, and now you guys are saying.
We
"Where's the money?"
showed them where the money was in every budget. We didn't duck on how to pay for it in our first budget, Budget 2.0. We didn't say, well, we're going to pass these taxes but not vote on them. We put together a complete budget and how to pay for it. And I want to see the vote on the floor how they pay for it.
They had suggested just a little bit, perhaps closing tax loopholes and tax exemptions.
But they're going to pay for teacher pay raises with that. Can they use the same tax exemptions that they're closing to pay for teacher pay raises and to pay for free tuition at our community colleges? You can only close the exemption once.
Do you have a contingency plan for 1366, depending on what the judge says in King County?
The governor pretends it doesn't exist. We'll see what the House
But
does.
on Thursday, so you'll have some guidance soon.
We will. We'll see how the House deals with it. The governor doesn't know what happened yet in his budget. So we're going to wait and see what the House does. I told you at the AP Forum and City Club that every member of our caucus has voted for or indicated support for 2/3.
Anybody else?
Are you guys going on the floor tomorrow in the Senate? You see, you guys have a meeting in the morning to put some measures on the floor calendar.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get we're gonna have to build a calendar, and we're gonna have to caucus on a calendar. Even retread bills we need to caucus and talk about. We may pass some bills tomorrow. We just have to see how rules goes, building the calendar and caucus time.
You're gonna take another 3-day weekend this weekend, or?
I was here working, as were quite a few people this weekend. I look at my calendar.
The Senate committees, all except for one this week, are adjourned, so most of your members will be gone.
You know, I don't know that that's most, but I can look at my calendar. It's pretty well booked up, and I think it'll keep filling.
Senator Manwell.
Oh, I was asked if there's
Senator
anything I-
Manweller, what-
Well, appreciate it. I don't know if that's a promotion or demotion, but what do you guys get paid over there? The only thing I wanted to raise is there's some frustration about how many voices are being silenced in the House. We have a variety of very serious issues that citizens from all over the state want to weigh in on, and we've been told no hearings, no testimony, not one person is going to be allowed to come to this, the people's body, and express their views. So we've been told that despite thousands of people are frustrated about tolling on the 405, there will be no hearing on Mark Harmsworth's tolling bill, and all those frustrated people don't even have a chance to express that frustration to the people who write their laws. We've been told no hearing on the gender bathroom rules. I've received hundreds of emails from frustrated mothers, fathers who say, I don't want my teenage daughter showering with a naked 40-year-old man. We've been told you get no hearing, you get no testimony. Charter schools, one of the most high-profile decisions by the court, and hundreds of kids thrown out of school, no hearing, no testimony. This is a deliberative body, and represented people send us here to discuss the important issues. They don't have a right to win, but they do have a right to be heard, and what we've been told is you will not be heard, and that is not the deliberative process, and that's not the legislative process.
Senator Schessler, is there any intention in your caucus to maybe take up some of these issues, like particularly the transgender bathroom access rule? Because I know some senators have expressed concern also.
We're looking at a number of possible options of how to deal with that. I can tell you my email was very full from women in my district in particular that didn't appreciate that.
I think one of the things that's a little bit different about this list of issues is these aren't just Republican issues, especially charter schools, high-profile op-eds by senior Democratic House leaders, this is just about a 50-50 operation down here. You've got 73 Republicans, 73 Democrats, and a Democrat that caucuses with Republicans. So I think there's more of a duty to hear these bills than in the past, and if we, after allowing a reasonable amount of time for these to work through the process, we may ask people to vote on procedurals to see how much support there really is for these things, and if people are willing to stand behind their public statements.
You mean a floor action of some sort when you say procedurals?
Yeah, or in committee. We've got several options for doing that, but honestly, we should get them through the full process. And because most of these are highly supported by Democrats, I'm thinking that at some point they're going to want to go through the process in the regular way. That would make the most sense.
It sounds like no guarantee that there will be hearings in the Senate either, though.
On what?
On the bathroom rules.
Well, there hasn't been a bill dropped yet, so you have to have a bill before you can have a hearing.
Well, and we're talking about tolls and charter schools as well, and I think those are getting a hearing over there.
So would you recommend to your colleagues in the Senate send those bills over as soon as you can so that we have additional pressure?
Well, as long as they can go through their deliberative process as well, too. But, it is a little silly to wait for those to come over when, we're perfectly capable of running House bills here. And it has been on charter schools, House Democrats who have been pretty publicly supportive of that solution.
And same on the toll issue on 405.
Yeah,
We've
that's
got an equal number of concern from Democrat districts on that as well. As a matter of fact, the toll issue is predominantly in Democrat districts. And so you've got very, very strong bipartisan support. And so it just concerns us that you've got one person in each of these committees that's decided no, period. And so we've got some concerns with that in the House.
One more what charter schools bill and not get a hearing in the House, on the House side?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
You
you.
were told that there will be no hearings on charter schools in the House? Is that what I understand?
That's what we're being told.
Yeah, it's
There's not been a-
it's not on a calendar, and time is moving fast over here.
Is that coming from Speaker Chop or the chair of the House Education Committee?
Well, as you know, the chair of the House Education Committee and the person who was the prime sponsor of the charter school bill are the seatmates. And there's been a strong difference of opinion on that issue since the get-go.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yep.